I'm really excited to be here. My name is Rukiya Bernard, and on behalf of the UBCP Diversity and Inclusion Committee, we are doing the East Asian Diversity Roundtable. What was your first role on TV?
The one that I can remember most clearly was on the Sentinel.
Okay.
I was hired as monk number 2. Because back then, I had a shaved head, and my body was much bigger, like muscularly, but I wasn't like cut, you know, I had just big chunks of muscle on me. And so I got monks and thugs all the time.
Monks and thugs.
That was my thing. So, but this was a monk thug. He was a monk who was smuggling opium in his beads, right? So they were like, yeah, let's hire that guy. He's perfect. He's a monk thug. And that, check. And that was my first gig. I didn't have any lines.
Yeah.
Although I was hired as an actor.
Okay.
And it was all about me driving a big Lincoln Town car in my monk's robes with the beads. It was all about me running down an alley, being chased by cops, and then it was all about me getting killed by a triangular blade in the neck from a certain assassin.
Yeah.
That the Sentinel guy was like, I don't know if you remember the show, he's got like special vision and stuff like that. I sat there for hours and hours and hours as the leads just kept fucking up the shot.
Classic.
Yeah, it was classic, right? It was classic, you know? Anyways, that was my first kind of.
I'm going to hop back on a question about telling your parents that I'm going to be an actor.
Right.
And how was that for you?
Well, at the age of 6, as you know, I wanted to be an actress. And so my parents were like, okay, and they thought it would be a phase and that it would pass. And it was always, okay, you're going to either be a doctor, a lawyer, or an air flight attendant, so I can get free flights to Hong Kong. Those are your 3 choices, right? Mom and Dad. So, and then it was just acting kept on coming up, and then I booked a role on Street Sense on CBC, and that's where I started, and it was a kids show, and it did really well, and my parents were like, okay, you know.
So it was one of the series regular.
Yeah, one of the series regular hosts.
As your first job?
Yeah.
Whew, that's good on the parents who were doubtful.
Yeah, and I took like theater school prior to that, so they already knew that, you know. And then it was my acting coach that said, hey, there's these auditions at CBC, are you interested? And I'm like, yeah. My parents, they've accepted it. They're like, okay, you know what? You love what you're doing, it's obvious. And now they're a lot more supportive, but back in the day, they were not. So it is challenging, I think, for us Asians, right? Because our parents, you know, if we're from immigrant families, it's always, you need to work hard, you need to go to work, you need to make money, you need to go to school, you need a degree.
Absolutely.
You're nothing without a degree. My dad would say this over and over to me, right?
You're nothing without a degree.
You're nothing.
What about a theater degree, which not
the same.
Yeah.
Not the same.
Doesn't count.
But we noticed, like, even with all of us, we've got 2 lawyer, right? Like there was a lawyer here thing going on. I don't, you know, and it's you know, law
or with
medicine.
Mayumi, you can be married to a
doctor.
Yeah,
not even good enough to be one, but yes, right?
It's much simpler. It's easier.
Yeah.
I don't want to generalize, because I mean that's part of the problem, and why we're having this is the parental pressure to be one of these classic doctor, lawyer, high power engineer. Is this a thing in Asian culture, would you say?
I think there's some of that, but I think it also depends on when your family immigrated and what generation you are.
Okay.
Because I think the closer you are to being the first generation to immigrate, the more pressure that the family has on a certain kind of success and security, because they're already feeling insecure about moving to a new country and not having the same kind of support, or, you know, trying to understand the language and the value systems. Like, there are a lot of challenges when you're new to a new country. And so but even so, like when you're 3rd generation like myself, I had different challenges, and I kind of blame my parents actually for being in the arts, because they're working class. My father was a farmer, his father was a farmer before that, my grandparents were farmers, and And so this idea of working hard, and financial security was very much ingrained. Like my father, we were already working in the summers when we were kids. It was a big deal for my father to take me to the bank to open my own bank account. Like as soon as I turned 18, I was doing my own income taxes. Like my parents are very, very, not obsessed, but very conscious that, to survive as a minority, we need to take care of ourselves.
Going back to the parenting thing,
Yes.
that it's hard for them to imagine, because even moving here, like many of my Asian friends over there would say, like, well, where do you see yourself there? We don't see, us in like Hollywood movies and TV shows, so why would you move there? We don't see us in there, so why do you think there's a space for you as well over there?
Yeah.
Which was, I think it also connects to how parents would, like they won't think that there's a successful route there, because they don't think that there's a good example that it's like to aim for, that it's like, well, I want to be like, I don't know, Meryl Streep. It's like, yes, but Meryl Streep is white.
You're right.
honey.
There's a few. It's like Sandra Oh, who is really it.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even prior to Sandra Oh.
Lucy Liu.
Lucy Liu.
Lucy Liu.
She kind of opened the doors, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
A little bit. She went the whole martial arts route, right? There's that.
With
Well, she
Charlie's
started with
Angels.
Ally
McBeal.
McBeal,
No,
right?
she did other stuff before that. That was
Oh,
more
okay.
martial arts.
Oh, I didn't know
okay.
that.
I
Ally
didn't know that
McBeal was
either.
her breakout role, where she didn't have to do that.
Which is great. We need more of those.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd just like to
Yeah.
add to that, just really quickly, to share a quick experience. I went and auditioned many, many years ago for a part called French Ambassador. And I walked in to a room with
Because
five.
you speak French?
I do.
Okay.
But they just called me in
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
audition for the part. And my other people in the room were 5 or 6, 5'9", 2 6-foot tall white males. So I go in. It's quite early in my career, and one guy says to me, "What are you auditioning for?" Which is, I'm like, "Oh, French Ambassador." And he says, "Oh, I'm casting a really wide net." So at that time, I was quite new to the business, and I didn't understand I didn't know what to do. So I just let that affect my audition, is what it was. But if any, younger actors are gonna watch this, I just want to say, it is totally okay, and you don't have to get angry. And that was my problem, I just wanted to punch him.
Yeah.
So I decided to do nothing. But it's totally okay to call people on that shit, if it still happens. To say something like, it may be your opinion that I can't play a French ambassador, but I know I can. And I think it's rude for you to say that to me. It's totally okay. It's not gonna hurt your chances in the business. People aren't gonna see you as a problem, And these are things that I'm hoping younger generations will come to understand from watching these things, because I had no guidance. I just didn't know. I just thought, I guess I should just keep my mouth shut and just fucking take it, But I didn't have to. Even then, I could have totally said something, and he probably would have been like, "Oh shit, like, yeah, of course, right?"
Or not.
Or not. Yeah, I give people the
Yeah.
benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
While it's really great that there's success stories like Sandra Oh and Lucy Liu, generally speaking, I think that the visibility of Asians, East Asians, is still really, really almost non-existent.
I don't really agree
Well,
with you.
I think in terms of high-profile roles and people leading series and stuff, I think that the conversation about diversity, especially in the States, is still very literally black and white. In Canada, I think we make more room for Indigenous stories, which I think is really important. But I feel I think there's still a really simplistic idea of what diversity looks like on screen at the expense of East Asians, South Asians, Latinx, Middle Eastern, North African. I just feel like that mix that we're used to seeing every day in the streets where we live is not visible on screens.
Hiro, you were
Yes.
saying.
Well, I mean, I agree that we don't have, diversity is not where it should be. And, you know, you just mentioned a whole raft of ethnicities and cultural groups who are invisible. But compared to them, I would not say that East Asians are invisible. I think that East Asians, especially now, are way more visible, certainly, than they've ever been. And
Which is
you
not
know,
a big
you know, you
improvement.
look at the #1 show in Canada is Kim's Convenience, and you know, if you look at
one
broadcast
show.
news, you know, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
it's
East
one
Asians
show.
on broadcast news. But we're talking about a whole range of different issues.
No, it's better. It's
Under
better
the
for
rubric
sure.
of diversity, and there's
But
very complex, you know, socioeconomic and socio-political issues that that all play into representation on screen, and you know, percentages of who speaks, who doesn't speak, who's visible, who's not visible. But I just don't agree that East Asians as a group are necessarily the most oppressed.
I didn't say
think
that. Oh, I did
um,
not say that.
well, to say that we're invisible,
Yeah, we are.
I would say Southeast Asian is way more invisible than East Asian.
Right, we're not playing the
I would
game of who's
say-
the most oppressed. I'm saying we're all invisible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to hear Hiro's rebuttal,
yeah.
though.
I just say, you know, like when you consider the shows that are on, the fact that, you know, there's constantly cycles of Japanese anime, Japanese films that are remade. It's not as if Japan, China, Korea are completely outside the realm of the consciousness of popular culture around the world. If you're talking about why don't we have stars, why don't we have lead romantic, you know,
Yeah. What do you think that's about?
actors and so on, right?
Yes.
I think that, you know, we do, maybe not as much as you want, but I don't see that it's a situation that is not improving, or that I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why Black entertainers are more visible than East Asian entertainers in North American culture right now. And there's a whole history of why that would be, you know, and and in the early part of our conversation, we touched on some of the cultural reasons why that might be, because it's only recently that Asian kids have been entering into the entertainment field in North America in large numbers, partly because of parental pressure or other cultural pressures, you know. You know, I mean, we can't ignore the fact that there's a whole hip-hop culture that, you know, in the arts, hip-hop, music, rap music, graffiti art, dance, there's like a whole Black culture that creates and develops Black entertainers, and that's been going on for, you know, you go back to jazz, you go back to, you know what I'm saying?
I think that's
mean,
what I'm kind of like adding to what you're saying, but it's really interesting to see how like the East Asian community and the Asian American community has like different point of views on things. Like you mentioned about Japanese animation too, and like North American cultures like adapting that story and then making into like this and in making North America, and then we talk about Asian American representation,
casting white
and there's
actors in
always like
Well,
identity.
and recently, yes, they've cast Emma Stone in that movie
Yeah,
as
Scarlett
a.
Johansson,
Yeah,
like, you
Yes,
know,
but I
yeah.
wanted to
Watching
point out
those
that like
stories.
there's a interesting identity clash between East Asians and Asian Americans. Like there's a different, so when we put it into one umbrella of like Asians, there's
Yeah.
different dynamics there. And I feel like with like what you're saying about like the Black community, like they have all the arts and like hip hop and all that, like they somehow go under that same umbrella and then they embrace And I think that's still something that with Asian cultures, like there's something to work on.
So I just want to bring out a personal experience that was very positive for me. And it shows where the power lies. So we were saying about creators of shows, right? So I would like to bring out an experience that highlight an experience I had last year, and it's going to repeat this year, where I got to be number 2 on a show.
Great.
And this is where the power play is. It's the show was pushed and encouraged by the CEO of the New Tang Dynasty TV that is based in Toronto, and they were founded in New York.
Okay.
Now this channel is still obscure because it's backed by Falun Gong practitioners.
Okay.
But I just want to say that because they tapped into funding, they decided to have a show that is entirely in English. Most of the cast are all Asians.
Okay.
And in my 20 years, this was probably the most fulfilling experience on screen, because I got to not need to speak not having to have any accent, and I got to play a more modern Canadian citizen of Chinese ancestry, and several dimensions because the 2 main characters are 2 brothers. And the older brother, he still maintained ties with mainland. And his younger brother, played by myself, had the opportunity to become a foreign student, a long time ago, and became a surgeon. And so they would engage in these debates, and they would stand strong in their position. And so we got to have this brotherly exchange, but also ideological exchange.
Yes.
And so that was very fulfilling.
Was the writer's room all Chinese?
So
Yes.
the writer, the writer is someone that was friend of the CEO
Okay.
for several years.
Okay.
And he's a human rights lawyer, and he's Haitian, Jewish Haitian, born and raised in Moncton, and came out from the same law school I did. And so very diverse, but because he was very close to the Asian culture, I felt that what we were saying, and because he was closely supervised by that CEO who's Chinese, I felt that what I was saying was still always rang true. And I have been given what we call high profile roles in Quebec. There was a show that I was in on CBC French where I was number 3 on the call sheet. But it like double edged, because high profile, but at the same time it was written by someone. I felt that what I was saying was something a bit off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think that's true. Writing room or someone that's very close to the culture.
It's so important. That's one of the reasons why I've gone into more into directing and writing, because I see how authenticity is lacking behind the camera, and the representation in front of the camera, of course, matters, but it needs to stem from there to get a correct representation, to tell stories that are more than the one dimension of immigration stories, and also even from the East Asian culture, whether it's about Japanese culture or like Taiwan or like anywhere that they need to have someone who knows that because of it's so apparent in the way they speak, the way they communicate. And it can't just come from one side. Representation doesn't
totally
to make
agree.
it more authentic, and with a theater as well. Anything that you make, it just needs to round up. And I think there's a long way to go. There's an increasing number of performers, but I think a lot of programs and diversity programs are starting everywhere, which is
there's
great.
a huge push for
There's
diversity
initiative.
right now.
Oh yeah, and it's
huge
awesome.
push.
I
which is
really
great.
hope that just keeps increasing and then becomes a norm.
Yes.
And I probably wouldn't have been able to do something like this, to start writing or directing or even like meet Hiro on a set where like two Asian, like, and many other Asian actors were in a show that we were on.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have happened if like the time was, I don't know, even 5 years ago. It's not the same, and it is evolving. It's like, you know, it's baby steps, but the more we increase behind the camera, I think things will happen a lot more sooner.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's the stories. It comes back to the stories,
Yeah.
right? And who
Well-
gets to write those stories?
Well, I think it's interesting. I had the discovery that with a lack of diversity in storytelling, it affects crew members, including like makeup, for example, and
Oh
hair.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And I was wondering if you guys had anything to add to that. For me, it's like makeup. Because there's not so many black roles. When I was coming up, there's more now, but coming up, there weren't as many. You know, they had a lot more trouble matching my skin, and it wasn't as easy as doing the Caucasian actresses. When it comes to my hair, I keep it natural. There was a general like, what do you do with your hair, Rukiya? Like, you want to show me? I got some product.
with makeup for the eyes for Asians.
Oh,
like
what's
either
really
Lucy
do.
Liu or
They
it's
didn't know
like
how to, yeah.
what's
Yeah.
can you expand on? Because I don't know this.
It's just because Asian eyes are shaped differently and they're not as deep set, and so how to make them pop for
Okay.
everyone else, you need to understand that.
Okay.
And so yeah, way back in the beginning, a lot of them didn't really know how to make you look good. They just
But I find as time goes on, it's getting better.
Is it getting
getting
better?
better.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to add to, like, when you look at the group that we have here, yes, we're all Eastern Asian, but we're all so diverse.
Yeah.
And I want, like, more writers to see that, hey, you know, there's so many roles we can play. I mean, you look at us, we're so different from one another, yet we're all Eastern Asian, yeah. But I'd like more writers and producers and creators of shows to see that, hey, we can actually have an Asian person in this role. There's no reason why we can't. And that's the point,
Yeah.
right?
But that will
Yeah.
take time, obviously.
I agree, it's getting better. It's been better since I started, you know, like whatever, 25 years ago. But I would love to get to you know, a time when I say something like, yeah, I just want more from my industry. I just want more. And everyone says, no problem, man. Because I can't say that right now.
What do you mean?
I can't say, I just want more from my industry. And then people look at me and go, okay, well,
What do you mean by you want more from your industry?
well, like, you know, to be accepted, right?
Okay.
To play any part I wish.
Okay.
You know, to not be seen as just as an East Asian actor, but as an actor, right? Because that's a big part of what we bump up against, right? Like a Caucasian actor could say that, and the general feeling in the room would be like, no problem, you can have more. But I can't, that's what that bugs me. It's disturbing to me that I can say it, but I'm not gonna have that support. Everyone's gonna have their own list of, well, you're gonna have these certain problems, Raugi. You can have it, but you're gonna have these certain problems. I'd like to get to a point where those lists don't exist in anyone's head.
I think we're actually getting there. We're taking the baby steps. I mean, we're having this forum here, which will be publicized, right?
Yeah.
And yes.
want to add something else that is really important to me, and I don't know if anybody else has come up against this, but I find that for East Asian actors in particular, we already have a limited number of roles that are written particularly for us, specifically for us. But then it gets down to the nationality of the character. So I auditioned for something last year. The character was supposed to be Japanese. I put it on tape, and my agent came back and said, the casting director wants to know if you have a single drop of Japanese blood in you. Which meant that they weren't going to see me unless I could prove or say, and I'm going, well, no one knows. Like I said, like, those national boundaries are arbitrary, right? And the kinds of migration and movements within that region, we're all a little mix of something. And you would never have that problem if you're white or indigenous or black, because, you know,
if you're black, you do have that problem.
well, not in the same degree, because there's many times that I've been told, like, you know, I didn't get past it because, you know, they wanted specifically someone Japanese or specifically Korean.
Well, that brings up a very interesting point.
White people do not have this issue.
Well, no. Well, they're the kind of the status quo. So.
But I just want to say
right, which is why we're doing this.
that I want to say that
Yeah.
that's one of those barriers in place that nobody really talks about.
Yeah.
Because white people get awards for playing any group they want. They even get to play Asian characters, right?
Yes.
And so, but we are even more limited to a perceived idea about what a Chinese character can be or a Japanese character.
Well,
and I want to.
Yeah. Sorry,
No,
I keep on interrupting
just,
you.
I just want to say that that's something that needs to be addressed, because at the very bottom of that, that's racist, because it feels like we're being told that we can't be actors, we can't act those characters like every other actor out there. We're being told that we are restricted to acting the idea.
Again, it is a gray zone of like, do we, you know, where do we draw that?
Where
Because we don't want to also limit the opportunity for actors who, like, of course we can play Italian. Why can't we play Italian? You know, like it's.
Well, there are Italian Asians in
Absolutely.
Italy, right?
Absolutely.
And there are, you know, Asians in France, and there are Asians in England. So it's not about us like playing white. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the limitations that are placed on us because we're perceived as not being that Asian nation, of that Asian nation.
Well, that's interesting.
That's different than, you know, white actors. Like I said, you wanted somebody who could speak Japanese. That's great. I mean, then you're likely to find a Japanese actor. That's not necessarily true, but it's like a white actor, you know. They're not going to hire a white actor to play a German character if that German character needs to speak fluent German, and they can't speak fluent German, right? So there's, that's,
Yeah.
I'm talking about a double
Hollywood.
standard, though. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about
the
the
double
Yeah.
standard for
It's a
sure, and
conversation.
it's a fair point. And I wish we had more time to get into it. So I think we need to do another one of these UBCP. And I would love to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to speak on the issue of diversity and inclusion with the East Asian community.